everyone, Kareem Rae here, and today we have Dennis Chen, who is a former 10-year pro footballer, also the former record scorer for Orlando City SC, a two-times USL Cup champion, USL Gold Boot winner, and now the founder and player agent at CHYN Sports. Dennis, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Kareem.
So can you just take us back in time and just share how you got involved into the beautiful game?
Yeah, so for me, I was born in Jamaica and I grew up there. So I remember it was the 94 World Cup. I was watching Italy versus Brazil in the finals. And after that, that game kind of inspired me a bit. And I went outside to play and everyone was playing on the streets. And that's really where my love really came. You know, a lot of Jamaicans, they run track and field. Their track is really big. So I started off in track. And I just hated running without a ball, man. So as soon as I had a chance of actually using the ball while I was running, it was it for me. So that's really how I started with football.
Nice. How and when did you sign your first professional contract?
Oh, so I have a crazy story to see how I went pro. Um, so my family is really big with education. My father is Chinese, so you know those Asian Asian backgrounds is really all about education. So I was playing in college at the time and I did pretty well. Won accolades and was winning some stuff. And I told them one day that I wanted to play football after I was finished. And no one kind of was believing it. And like, no one from around here. I was living in Orlando at the time, and no one was from around was really a pro from our area that stayed in our area, especially. We had Dax McCarty, who's now the captain of Nashville SC, and then Graham Zusi, who's a captain sometimes with Sporting KC, and those are the only two, and they're around my age. So they kind of went before me. And so no one really believed in it. And then I said, hey, give me 6 months. I told my family, give me 6 months. And my dad said, if you don't get it in 6 months, if you don't make it in 6 months, you have to do what I say. And then he wanted me to go to grad school and all that kind of stuff. So I started training at a facility, kind of like a performance facility called SSP. While I was training there, these guys, started coming in. These, like, some of them were like pros. They had like a year of pro game and blah 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 from all over, and they were brought in by actually my high school coach because he wanted to start like an agency kind of thing. But so it was like a lot of older guys, and they were working out with me. And I remember it got announced that Orlando was gonna get a professional team all of a sudden. So my timing was like kind of perfect. So, but at that time they said they were moving a team from Austin to Orlando. So in my head, I was saying, oh, damn, I'm done. Like, they're just taking all the players over. Like, there's no real space for me. So my thought was hopefully try to get into like an open trial or something in another team. And I remember I was working out and I were doing like testing, and Adrian Heath and Ian Fuller, who, funny enough, is now they're the coaches for Minnesota United right now, still in MLS. But they were coaches, going to be the coaches for Orlando, and they came in to tour the facility. And I remember everyone was like, "Oh man, those are like pro coaches." So I started like killing everybody in the race. I made sure I was killing it. So I remember they put together my high school coach put together 12 was going to put together around 12 players. And they were like college guys or guys that are ex-pros to put together like a 6v6 game with possession and everything to show the coaches. So the Orlando City coaches were going to come watch. And I wasn't in the original 12. And then someone either got hurt or couldn't make it, and then they called me to be in there. So I went in this random place where I wasn't even supposed to be. And out of all 12, they saw me and they picked me. And I got invited to preseason in Orlando City. Wow. So that is actually how I got seen. Wasn't like I didn't get drafted. It was just a random thing like that. I got invited to preseason. I remember getting the call. I was like really ecstatic. I went in with the mindset that, all right, I don't know what the level is going to be like, you know what I mean? But I'm going to make sure I made the best of it. I'm going to run as fast as I can, hard as I can. I'm going to listen to everyone. So when I went in, I had the most positive attitude. I was probably one of the youngest guys there, was one of the only rookies there. So everyone just took advantage of me. I was pumping balls, watching pennies after training. They like anything that needed to be done, I did it. And and it went down. I remember there was guys on trials every week. And week in, week out, I was still there. I was waiting for that call to the office, didn't get that call. Guys are out, guys are in. And it came down to the week right before the start of the season. So I was in preseason with them for 2 months, pretty much, with no news if I signed. And 1 week before the season started, I get a call into the office and they offer me a contract. So I was like 1 week before it. And then even then, when I got offered that contract, it was for a year. Nothing was really guaranteed. I still wasn't at that level because the speed of play, everything, I had all the athletic tools. I had a lot of the technical tools somewhat because I was a good dribbler. I had all those tools, but I was so lacking in the tactical awareness and stuff like that. It's just what the jump entails. So I didn't really get my chance to actually play real minutes until the Open Cup in the middle of the season. And I remember I finally got a start because they needed a rest player, and I came in and I scored an assist, so it was like a good thing. So they're like, oh yeah, I can trust him. So they started throwing me in the games at the end of the game to run around, and then the end of the season when we're going into playoffs, I scored in the last game of the season, and then I scored in every playoff game throughout the USL Championship run. And literally everyone started calling me the super sub. And then in the championship game, our keeper got a red card in the 50th minute. So they had to sub out a field player to put another goalkeeper in. So we're down to 10 men and it was 0-0. So our coach, I'm a rookie at the time, said, hey, we're gonna put the fastest guy in and he'll make up for the extra man. So I got put in the championship game around the 60th minute, and we went to double overtime, extra time, and we were down 2. We ended up being, we were supposed to win. They tied it. We went to extra time. We were down 2-1, and in the final 3 minutes of the game, ball gets flicked. I run in behind. We're going 1-on-1 with the keeper. I get 2-footed from behind. The guy gets a red card. We get a penalty. We tie it. We go to penalties, and that's how Orlando won his first title.
Wow.
And after that game, it was like my rookie year, first title, everything. And I got offered a 3-year deal, guaranteed 3-year deal. And that's how my career really began. And then that second year, I won the Golden Boot, MVP voting. So it just, everything took off from there.
That's an amazing story. So it's like these moments, these opportunities that you got, you really took full advantage and established yourself in these moments is what I'm taking away from it. What advice would you give to young players growing up right now that want to go pro?
I mean, the margins are so small. Like a lot of people look at it, a lot of the pro players are like, oh, I'm better than him, or you know what I mean? It's so small. You might be right in a sense, but you have to understand that the game is a simple game. So the mistakes one person makes is what makes or breaks sometimes. So it's all about consistency. So as a young player, you got to think about consistency, and you got to think about everything is subjective. One coach might think you're the best. Another coach might not think you're the best. So you can't take negative criticism too much to heart, and you have to make sure you hold full accountability. What I mean by that is a lot of youth players and youth parents especially, everything is politics for them. Oh, he doesn't make it because of politics. Oh, it's because of this coach like no one wants to take real accountability. And the truth is, no matter how much a coach might not like you, if you are dominating that pitch and you're by far the best person at that position, there's no coach in the world that's going to keep you out unless you fought them, right? So if you're not making it and you're not, going through the levels, it's probably because you're not good enough. And you're keeping it so close to everyone else that it becomes subjective. So they pick that other person because they like that other person, and then because that's human nature, we're gonna go with who we like. So if you want, I might like my best friend, right? But if I know someone is 10 times better than him, I'm gonna take the other guy on my team. It doesn't matter if this guy's my best friend. So you have to make sure, I think, as a young player, to know that it's not always personal. No one's just trying to stop you from getting pro. It's just you might not be good enough at that time, or you might not have put yourself in the right opportunity to get seen. So And those opportunities to get seen, you might have zero in your life to get seen, and you might have one. And some people have multiple. Some people are lucky enough to have multiple. You know what I mean? So you have to make sure you take advantage of every situation. So if I give that advice, I say take full accountability, and know that these chances are few and far between. So if you're not making it, and there's no, that's not the time for excuses and politics and this coach doesn't like me. You just gotta buckle down and work harder. You know what I mean? So it's the 0.001% for a reason.
Got it. Dennis, I've never asked this question before yet, but this will be the first time. What's the best pathway to go pro here in the US?
So this is a very complicated question a bit, but there's so many paths. I would say the path, what really deems the most success that I can see, if you just use pure statistics, it seems to be academy level. So if you're playing the MLS Next, the ECNL, the whatever, I think MLS Next is now the top level of what used to be the USDA. You put yourself in a position for one or two things. If you really, really stand out, your local MLS team in the area would probably recruit you to their MLS Next team, and that gives you a chance to maybe play with the MLS Next Pro as an academy player, or move on up and maybe get even a homegrown contract because you came up through that academy. So that's one path where the MLS Next and those top academy kind of gives you. Another path is that you're gonna get seen because of all these showcases and these MLS Next things going around, that you're gonna be first dibs on colleges. And yeah, you could get lost in the thousands of colleges and the thousands of players, but it still kind of gives you like a little more extra leeway lifeline where you have 4 more years of eligibility to kind of get seen. And if you do stand out well, you have a chance to MLS draft. If you're not quite MLS draft, you're still pulling together a CV that you can get yourself in the USL trials. In the summer, you should be trying to play USL 2. You know what I mean? So you're always in that, in those things. You're just building a CV. You're building these things that when a USL 1 team says, all right, you played at Belmont. You're not even a big D1 or something. And he did, and he had 60 games here, and then he played 30 games for Flint City, or whatever, Des Moines Menace, and it builds your thing so they're like, all right, this kid has something. So you're kind of putting yourself in that category too. And then for the ones that don't make it through those final, or get straight offers to go to trials or preseason, your only bet after that basically is basically you either know someone with a connection that you can get into one of those like invite only trials, or you go to one of these path to pro showcases, or you just start going around and going to open trials. I mean, everyone thinks that, oh yeah, open trials is a money grab, which I mean, for the most part, it's a money grab just because the people that go there are not for the level. So if you said it's $150 to go and try out, and just all guys that are not USL or MLS level goes to try out, then obviously no one's going to get chosen. Like, they don't pick you just because you put your money down. And a lot of people think, oh, they don't care about the guys that go there. They just do it to get some extra money. It's just, yeah, it can give some extra money, but what, making a couple, even 20 extra $1,000 is not really going to do much for a club. So it's a chance. And I know guys that have come through open trials and made it. So it's better that they have it than they don't. Because if you're good enough and you can stand out in those craziness of a open trial, you're going to get invited to invite only, and you're going to get invited to the preseason, and you have a chance of making it. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to like your game intelligence. I think that is huge. I don't mean just watching games. I just mean just being a student of the game in general, knowing that even at my age, I'm still learning. It just doesn't matter. You gotta, obviously athleticism matters, but football is one of those games. If you're so good and your IQ is so good and your technique is so good, you can get around not being the fastest, strongest. But yeah, I think that playing in an academy structure gives you the best chance. Everything else, UPSLs and NSL, that people are like, some of them are, I know it's expensive to play in an academy level, but I'm telling you, if you somehow play these these Sunday leagues, and a lot of people, they don't speak English that well, and they're coming, they're really new immigrated, they're playing Sunday league football. If you're good enough, right, and you're young, you're below 18, and you're playing these leagues, someone will scholarship you to play MLS next. It's just what people are looking for. They're not going to let a kid that's really good not play. I've seen it happen all the time. I watch it happen in Orlando all the time. We give opportunities to kids like that. But the matter of fact is, you have to be good. And to be good, you have to train a lot. You have to, commit. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I just want to confirm something here. Like, for example, Toronto FC, they have an academy system over there, right? And I'm pretty sure if it hasn't changed, that all those players in their system, they don't have to pay anything. It's all covered by TFC. Is that the same thing for all MLS academies?
Yeah, pretty much. If you're in the top teams of, I think it's just two age groups for sure is fully paid for MLS Next in all the MLS teams that has those academies, for sure. And then some clubs have every age groups that are paid for it. So yeah, like, even if you're in the youth, because, like, for example, Orlando City, where I'm at, they have, I think, the 15s and 17s are the main age groups for MLS Next, because those are fully funded everything. And if you're the 12s, or the 19s, like, some of those players will be funded, or majority might be funded depending on the year and what they plan. I think starting now, all of them will be funded. But so your best bet, if you don't have the money, is to make an MLS Next team an MLS ran MLS Next team in your area. Then that way you're not playing at all. So yeah.
Got it. You've had a decade in the beautiful game as a pro. And then before we go into that, did you have an agent facilitate your whole career for your whole 10 years, or did you manage it yourself? How did that go about?
I got an agent after my second year of playing. At a time, there was supposed to be a transfer between Chicago Fire and Orlando for me to go to Chicago Fire, and I ended up signing with an agency that is a pretty decent sized European agency. It just basically through my club kind of recommended them at the time, because I was in a hotel in Chicago at the time, and they're like, you don't have an agent, you should probably have in these things, because you can't negotiate this yourself. And that's how I started. I ended up switching to my agent, a new agent, after 4 years. So the last 6 or so years of my career, I was with this guy, and he was the best. Like, he was like a best friend, big brother. To get an agent, I think a lot of footballers, they overestimate the power of an agent, or they underestimate the power of an agent. It's like this sweet spot, right? Where it's not, an agent can't make up for it if you're not good. so if you're not good enough, they can put you in front of eyes. Maybe they're lucky, but at the end of the day, it's what the footballer does. So the agent should be this there to support and to get you, the right moves and to give you the right advice. But some people expect miracles. Like, they're like, oh, if I don't have an agent when I'm 12, or you know what I mean? Like, as long as you're playing well, like, those options for an agent will come. You know what I mean? Like, you just need to focus on your own game. I wouldn't focus too much on agents yet. But let me say this: a real good agent, if you're a decent player, could get you moves that you never dream of getting too. So, like, you know what I mean? So people are always like, oh yeah, like, I want to go to this big agency. So a lot of people are like, all right, if I'm going to get an agent, I want the biggest. that's the worst way to look at it. Because the biggest agencies also will have the biggest players. And if you're a young player coming through, and you're say even a very good talented player, you're an MLS academy, and you're looking to sign a homegrown deal, if you sign to the biggest agencies, they have like 15 other guys like you, 20 other guys like you, right? So you're not as, you might think, oh, well, they want to make money off me, so they're gonna push me. But like, think about it. If you're a center back and they have 16 other center backs, and someone said, "Hey, I need a center back," which one of those guys do they pick? You know what I mean? So you have to look at that. Whereas you can, a smaller agency might be like, "Oh, we have two center backs, so I'm pushing both of them." You know what I mean? And you might get an opportunity more. And a bigger agency, they might only call you when it's time for a deal, or when the end of the season. Where a smaller agency, they're going to keep up with you. They're talk week by week. It just depends on what you're looking for, really. So yeah, the agency thing is a little tricky.
Got it. Now you're yourself. Is it you're an intermediary? I'm not too sure if they still call intermediaries agents, or I don't. What word do you like better? Agent, intermediary,
Intermediary is good. Agent's good. Player rep is
player?
good. Manager, you can call it anything, is it? Tomato.
Yeah. So I won't ask you why you chose that, because I know.
Yeah.
But I put a couple questions down in regards of the agent space. So the first question I'll ask is, what license are required?
Back in the day, you had to. It's much harder. You had to actually take a test, through FIFA. But now you only have to basically get how do you say it? Basically get cleared by your local federation. So if in the US, it's through USSF, so US Soccer, through US Soccer. You have to, you don't really have to take a test. You kind of have to do a background check, pay us money, you do a background check and everything, and they have to see if financially able to you're not a felon or something trying to bamboozle people. So nowadays, it's every federation kind of has their own clearances, and US Soccer is just pretty cut and dry. And then when you get pre-registered with US Soccer, and so anyone can do this. Like your mom can do this. Get pre-registered by US Soccer, and then it's up to you. It's up to be like a full-fledged registered after I think a year or something. Within that time, you have to do a deal, like within a professional deal, something, and then I think that's when you really become registered. So with the USL or
Yeah, got it. So, all right, boom, you get your license, and then how was your experience like starting off? You already had your professional career. You've worked with an agent. Did you understand the full landscape, or were you still learning things as you were going on? And how was that experience?
Oh yeah, even now, a year or so in, I'm still learning. So I think I knew a lot. I knew a lot of what to expect. See, I didn't want to jump in fully not knowing. So I spoke to enough people before. I spoke to other agents. I spoke to my agent, who at the time owned his own agency, and wanted me to think about it from years prior. So yeah, I knew a bit how to what to expect, but there's nothing like actually doing it. When you get into it and you have to actually make the connections and find the players and knowing what the right fits, the right clubs, and make these things happen. Nothing teaches you more than experience. So you can know it all you want, but to actually get out there and do it is another thing.
Yeah, 100%. You guys manage and help players facilitate their careers all around the world. How do you guys do that? Why not just focus on the US market? How do you guys manage all these players?
I think the biggest thing that we wanted to do is we wanted to not only be a support system for players, because both I and my partner Giuseppe are ex-players, so we know what it feels like to be in that the player's shoes. So we thought about it like, all right, what would I want as a player? I mean, I want someone who's really invested in my career, my future. I want someone, whether I'm scoring goals or I'm not scoring goals, to care about me and check up on me in time to times, or I can call up and say, hey, like this is what happened in training. I like, you know what I mean? That is what I liked as a player. And we kind of gauge that with our players, you know what I mean? And we're very hands-on. We watch, almost all their games. We give feedback when needed, when necessary. We're always constantly promoting them. Make sure that when the time comes, we're not reactive. We try to be very proactive. So yeah, basically that's it. That's how we do it.
Got it. So how do you guys go about getting players? Is there a specific criteria that you guys, a step-by-step criteria that you go by, or does every agency do the same thing, or do you guys have your own step-by-step criteria?
I think it depends. Every agency might do it a little bit different. For us, there's a few things we look for. If it's a young player below the age of 18, for example, there's not going to be much on them. So either we have to see them in person, or they have to get a fantastic review from someone else. But we have a young player below 18, we have to see first, almost like. And the way I look at it is like, I don't expect the finished product now. And my gift, I think, and it's always been my gift, is to see what can be. So I see potentials and ceilings. I see, based on these things, a kid could be killing that level, U17 to that. It does not mean that they'll translate that to U19 or translate that to pros. There's things that the eyes can see, that those are tools that really translate, and there's just you being dominant for your age. So when it comes to young players, that's a little bit more tricky. It takes a certain eye. When it comes to players that are already pros, are a little bit older and more mature, we look for the fact that, can we actually help them? All right, if a guy is a really good player, they have their good head on their shoulders, everything's going well, they have an agent or whatever, that's not someone who needs me or needs us. So it's not someone we'll be chasing just because they have a good season or whatever. It's not like we're competing for them. Now that guy's settled, that guy's happy. We're not trying to rock that boat. But there's other ones where we might see something in them that they're not actually getting to the levels they can. You know what I mean? And if they're not represented, and a lot of them come and ask us and say, hey, listen, like, I'm looking for a new challenge. I'm looking for this. You know what I mean? What do you see? And those are guys we look at as well. And then you have the top dogs, right? The ones that are like a little older or bigger profile players, have a very, very extensive CV. And some of those guys are just trying to move markets. They're saying, hey, the people that I deal with now might not have any pull in the US or any pull in here, and do you have these contacts? And then we can make those contacts if necessary, especially if we have it. So we work with a lot of Europeans that are trying to go to the US, so that gives us now a connection in the Europe for the guys that want to go the opposite way. You know what I mean? So we wanted to just basically, like I said, like when we were players, we wanted to give people options. Because some people, the football is so nuanced that there's guys that are American that actually fit the style of play somewhere else. They might not have the physicality. They might not, play the game the same. So when they might fit in Israel, per se, or they might fit in Holland. And there's these guys in Holland that might fit here better. So, we kind of try to see what's the best path for different people. And we want to make sure that we don't get too stuck in a market that we just, just because we have the connection in that market, we're just moving guys in the same market. Like, because then we're doing our players kind of a disservice. So like Europe is not for everybody and America is not for everybody. So we're trying to kind of find that balance.
Got it. There's something I was going to ask you. Oh, the relationships with, who are the main contacts? Is it the coach? Are the decision makers? Who are the important um, people, or people of people that are in positions that you guys go out and contact or create relationships with? Obviously, you guys have previous relationships, but when you guys are going on and making new relationships, who do you guys try to get in contact with at the club?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, it depends. Each club's structured differently. If you there's some clubs that the coach is the sporting director or the GM, right? And then there's clubs that they're very strict culture. I mean, it you don't need to always get the top guy. All right, you just have to make sure you have a great relationship with someone in and around the club that can present a player for you. For example, could be a head scout, could be a GM, could be an assistant coach, or it could be a coach. So if I have a great relationship with the assistant coach at Tampa Bay Rowdies, for example, right? And the GM is the one who, or the head coach slash GM is the one who actually makes the decisions. I know that I want to contact my contact who's the assistant coach because he knows me as a person, and he might know that I'm not gonna show them a guy that I don't think could actually play at that level. Whereas if I contact that GM straight up, he doesn't know me at that point, so I'm just like anyone else. You know what I mean? So I think it's important to go to your main contact, and then when it's time, and he might say, "Hey, listen, my boy sent this guy, and I looked through him, and he looks good, and we should take a look at the coach," because that's what's going to happen if he actually thinks the guy is good enough. And then you go to coach, and then when you actually negotiating, then you might, then you two are negotiating together, you and the GM or you and the coach, are negotiating that player's contract or whatever, and then maybe you build a whole separate connection with them. And then next time you just go straight to them because they already know how you work. So it depends.
Got it. Can you take me through the process of, once you qualify a player, like this guy is a great player, you sign him to your agency, and you have a sporting director from a pro club that's interested in him, how do you guys facilitate the contract?
Yeah, well, sometimes it's pretty cut and dry where you've already, kind of, maybe the director or the club has already said, "Hi, listen, we need a center midfielder. Yeah, it's around this salary, this is our budget. You know what I mean? This is this type of player we want. Blah blah blah." If they've already said those things, and you went to that and you found that player, and you already told the player, "Hey, listen, if you're going to go to so and so team, this is the budget they have. This is what they have to offer. If it's so cold, would you play for that?" And they're like, "Yes, I would play for that. This is where I want to go." Or maybe they haven't. We set it up like they're like, "I'm interested, but like I would have to hear more about the project." And then maybe you facilitate that with maybe the coach, talks to him and say, "Hey, this is the project, blah blah blah. This is why we want you." I mean, obviously, if the player is free, and then that kind of dry, then it's basically they'll send over the contract with all the terms that you've agreed to, that term sheet first. You go through it to see if it's right, then they'll put that in a contract form in the standard USL or MLS contract. And then you just have to sign it, go back, and then it's pretty much done from there. And then all the other stuff will happen, where player has to go in for a medical and etc. And that's just like typical, very easy. Like if it's like that, then you have the ones where, say, the player's a really good player, and then the club is asking for it. You know what I mean? Or say, "Hey, this is the guy we want. Blah 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 blah. What is it going to take?" And then it could be the player's like, "I want 200K." And they're like, "Oh, that's too low. That's too much. We can only offer you 150." And then there could be a back and forth process like that. And these are all with free players. If the players are, obviously have a club, then these things at first a transfer fee, or it has to go through club members, and that's a very big tiptoeing on. You know what I mean? Especially if a player has a multi-year deal, because you don't want to start going to your player saying, "Hey, like, listen, so club's interested," because you might kind of take their focus off the team they're actually playing on. And transfers fall through all the time. Loan deals fall through all the time. So sometimes a player might have his heart set on a move, and it just doesn't work out first day. Sometimes a club might be interested in a player for a couple of days, and the player doesn't take too long to make that decision, and they find someone else, or someone else get friendly, they just push that aside. So it's a crazy world.
Yeah, sounds like it. So, talk a little bit about the transfer market. I'm not too familiar with it. Obviously, there's a transfer window open and close, and it's different around the world. So, is there a lot to the transfer market, or is it just it's pretty simple? The transfer window opens, you got a window to sign your players. How does it work?
So the windows basically say it means a lot, especially when for players that are not free. So a lot of times we get this whole transfer window thing, and because we're all fans of big clubs, we're all fans of the Arsenal, Manchester United, Real Madrid, all that kind of stuff. So with big clubs and big players, these guys are on like very long-term deals usually, and they're very rarely leaving for free. Right? I mean, they very rarely let their contract expire, that kind of thing. So in a sense, a lot of leagues and federations have periods of times in those transfer windows where clubs can negotiate moves and transfer moves between themselves for players that are not free. So all the other times around a year when that window is closed, you cannot buy that player even if you want it. You know what I mean? Now, for a free player, if you're totally free, your contracts have elapsed, you can technically sign to a club outside of a transfer window.
Okay.
Now, a club can like pay a fee for you or anything. There's things outside that window if their window is closed. For example, if a player is free and then you look, and then a club is interested in them, and if they're because their window is closed, and all of a sudden their last club is like, actually he's not free, he's on a contract. Now that player cannot go because he's not free anymore. So anywhere in the world, usually you can sign a free player almost at any time. The reason you don't see it as much in the Premier League and big leagues like that is because there's very rarely that a good player just becomes free that's not in the transfer window. It's very rare. Like in a rare case, you saw Christian Eriksen did that this past season, and that was because of heart issues. His contracts kind of got dissolved in Inter, and then he ended up signing, back in the Premier League, and now he's made an actual move to Manchester United in the actual window. So that's basically what the transfer window says. Like the US is there's also times where there's roster freezes when you can't add free players anymore. Like especially USL and stuff like that, and other leagues have playoffs. They're always going to be like a date where you cannot move that roster anymore. You can't trade with another team. You can't, just like any other sport, because you have a roster fee. So you can't just all of a sudden before the Champions League final, some guy breaks his contract over there, you just bring him in. Like there's freezes to it. So there's a certain period of time where certain players can come into your roster and not. So that's really what the transfer window is about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely am learning right now. With FIFA, I know that they put a 5% cap. 10% cap on a player from an agent or agency taking from a player's contract. Last time we spoke, you mentioned that you could take 5% max from a player's contract, and then the remaining 5% has to be paid from the player if negotiated, correct?
No, actually, you technically could take the full 10 from a player's contract. But I was saying that, especially in the US, to begin with, a lot of clubs will pay 5%, a standard 5% agent fee. So technically, you don't, the max they'll usually a player would pay, an agent would be that other 5. Some clubs might say they don't play agents at all, and then you could take from 10 from a player, but 10% is always max.
Got it. Yeah, and that was implemented back in 2022, right?
No, it's been around for a while. It's been around for a while, actually. That 10%, even throughout my career, that 10%. I mean, there probably is a lot of sketchy things going on around there when guys are taking a lot of different. I've heard so much stories, and that's why some people give agents a bad name, because they'll be doing a lot of crazy stuff, and a lot of players will do it because They just want the opportunity, right? You know, they're not gonna, if they said, hey, Kareem, I'm going to give you $1 million a year right now if you go to Shanghai Everglades, right? You're not going to be like, but I have to take 50% of that. You're going to be like, I'm taking my 500K. Right? You're not going to ask questions, right? So, because you would have never had that opportunity without that person even putting it in front of the table. So, but that's illegal. But I was saying that it could happen, you know.
Got it.
Yeah.
Let me think here real quick. Trying to see, like, I asked all the questions that I put on the list in regards to the agency. Am I missing like any key questions or like anything important in regards to this, being an
In
interview?
the space, I would think that I mean, oh, maybe like agent contract length, how switching agents, that kind of stuff. Maybe you can ask that.
Mm,
You know what I mean? How long is a typical contract with an agent? Or how long? You know, what does that even look like? How, you know what I mean? Or you can ask, you know, stuff like that, I guess.
yeah. Okay. That's in here, and then I'll ask. So what does it? Sorry. So what's the average length of a player's professional contract?
Well, usually with a team, it's the max I think you can sign is like 6 years, 5 years, but that rarely happens, especially in the US. A lot of people are just kind of betting on themselves, especially in like second tier football. It's usually a year and an option or 2 years, because people don't want to take those kind of long term risks. Um, but with an agent, I think a standard is 2 years. I mean, anything if you're signing anything past 2 years, that's pretty much a little bit sketchy. Um, it's usually up 2 years, and then it might have a clause where it automatically renews another 2 years if everything's going well, so you don't keep having to sign every single time to your same agent. And that keeps going. But usually, your contract with an agent does end. It's not like lifetime, which a lot of people might think or want to think. You know, a lot of people, if they find a good agent, and I think I'm a big fan of this. If you have a good agent and someone's being good to you and they're doing their job, which is to get you where you need to be, then you should stick with that person. A lot of people think the grass is greener, and I said, "Oh, I don't want to go to there," I don't wanna go there, and they try to switch around. It's not a good look, um, especially you start doing stuff like that. Agents talk to each other, coaches know about it. Like no one's gonna want to work with you when that time comes. When you're hot and you're scoring goals, you're blocking shots, and everything is okay. People might, want to help you a little bit, but um, I wouldn't recommend just kind of switching through. But if it's a point that this guy is doing you the service, and you said, hey, he said he's gonna find you a team, and he's not communicating with you, and blah blah blah. I think it is within your right to say, hey, listen, when I signed to you as an agent, as you be my agent, these are the responsibilities you were supposed to have, and these are the responsibilities you are not, put together, and then you can ask for your release. Most agents are not going to fight you on that. And it's just not worth the fight. You know what I mean? Unless it's like a huge player, and then they're like, whoa, and then there's too much money to be lost. So maybe, but for the most part, if you're trying to leave an agency, they're gonna let you go, or they might say, hey, you gotta pay me before you go because you owe me this kind of work. Because you might have owed it, but for the most part, you should be okay with that. But I wouldn't like I said before, jump agent to agent. And another thing a lot of players do, and I started off being guilty of it before I switched to my actual agent. So I've only had two agents. When they finish their contract with their first agent or their second agent, whatever, they say they're not going to sign with agents again, and they just work with whoever gets them a deal, right? So it makes perfect sense. You think, oh, logically, like I'll sign with, if you do your work and you get me a deal that I want to a club, I'm going to sign to you because I'm going to reward you for that work, right? But then you get in a position where you have all these agents pushing out your profile, right? And that might cross. So you might be like, all right, any agent that gets me an MLS deal, I'm gonna sign to them. And then 4 agents send you out to Sporting Kansas City. Sporting Kansas City is gonna look at it like, well, I just got this guy's profile from 2 other agents before. What's going on here? Who actually is representing this player? That looks terrible on the player as well. It just looks desperate. It looks terrible on the player. So I think you need to, as a player, do your research, maybe talk to a player that agent represents to see if it's the right fit, and then stick with that person at least for that window and to see, you know what I mean? And sign them. It's called a mandate, which is not necessarily a full contract with that agency. You mandate like, oh, this person has the sole rights to my name to negotiate for me in this market for this period of time. So that's called a mandate. So I've seen it happens all the time, right? So if you're saying if I'm as an agent, right, and I have my player play in the US, and one of my players say, hey, listen, I'm Korean, I want to play in Korea. I don't have a lot of Korean connections. My role now would be like, he signed to me, he wants to play in Korea. I'm going to try to make, you know, a connection in Korea somewhere, maybe through another agent, right? And therefore that other agent would need me and him to sign a mandate saying, hey, I have the sole rights to negotiate for him in Korea. And that, you know, the commission can be shared, whatever. You know what I mean? And that's how you do it. So you don't need to actually leave your agent to do that. You can sign, you know, but some agents don't want to work with any other, you know, people when they see like, oh, their place. So they might go around your agent and say, hey, sign with me, I'm the Korean agent, sign with me. And then, you know, you don't need this guy anymore. And a lot of players get caught up in that, you know what I mean? So I think as a player, you have to know your agent and see what he can do and can't do for you first.
Yeah, there's a lot of value that you're sharing here, and a lot I'm learning. And what about contract-wise? Are all contracts, do they all look the same, or do they all vary?
They all vary so much. There's so much depending on the league. In the same league, and this is what takes. Like every market's very different. For example, you can go to play in the Middle East, and they'll offer you a house and a car in your contract, right? This is at least in the contract. You play in America, and you just get your salary and your bonuses and blah blah blah. You don't get a house and a car, right? So you wouldn't know that they offer. Let's say you're a player that's going over there. That club might not even put that on your radar that you could get those things, right? Because that's not what you're used to from the market you're coming from. So, you know, there's totally different things. There's, you know, especially in South America, there's a lot of players that have their rights owned by like companies, and actual agents own rights to that player, meaning that like they might sell to LAFC, the player, but they own 30% of that player rights. So every transfer fee that LAFC selling that player, 30% of that transfer fee goes to whatever company or whatever that player, because they have the rights into that player. So there's player rights, and that usually happens in a lot of third world countries because of the fact that some of those boys would not have gotten to those levels without someone investing in them. And that's how they take care of their investment, right? They're saying, hey, I have the rights to this player. If an agent's going to move him for a transfer fee, I'm getting so-and-so amount. Or, you know, so you're selling rights to players like that. It gets very complicated. So there's that stuff happening as well. And training compensation. Whereas if you've gone through an academy, say if you're a player, you went to TFC Academy, for example, you spent 6 years at TFC Academy, and then you leave TFC and you go on trial in Europe at, you know, Ajax. And Ajax is like, oh man, we're gonna sign this guy. They can't just sign you. They're gonna sign you, but you have to pay money.
All right, so we're at the end here with the last 10 fun soccer-related questions. Ish. I need to change these. But they're speed questions, so Dennis, you got to answer them fast.
All right, let's go.
Let's do it. Who's your favorite team?
Arsenal.
Favorite player?
Right now, Neymar. In the past, Thierry Henry.
Favorite cleats?
Nike Vapors.
Favorite food?
Oh, curry goat.
Hey. Favorite artist musically?
That's a tough one. I'm gonna go with. I don't even know who's my favorite artist anymore. I'm just gonna go old school with Kanye.
Okay, Messi or Ronaldo?
Oh, that's. I'm not even gonna pick between those two.
Now
like
you have to choose one.
I'm gonna go Ronaldo because of the different leagues that he's produced in. I love Messi
I'm assuming you probably don't play FIFA anymore.
though.
We'll skip that one. Would you rather score 2 goals in a game or 1 goal and 1 assist in the past?
1 goal, 1 assist in the past. What do you mean?
Like I'm saying, like in the past when you used to play. Like, would you?
I'd rather score 2 goals. And I'm a passing kind of player, but I still rather score 2 goals.
For sure. Would you rather score a free kick or a PK last minute goal to win your team the game?
Free kick.
And the last one, if you were a coach and you were able to sub in any player in history to win you the game, who would it be?
Any player in history to win you a game?
Yeah.
I would go with R9, Ronaldo, back in the Brazilian Ronaldo, full prime Ronaldo. No one's going to stop that guy.
True. Well, Dennis, before we go, I just want to thank you for taking the time for joining us on the One Soccer Nation podcast today.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for having me.